Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Welcome to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast.
Every week, they talk about the Vancouver Canucks with a fair amount of nonsense thrown in.
Sure, they're never the first with the news, nor the best connected, and definitely more off the rails than on.
But they've been talking puck the longest, and that counts for something, right?
So strap in for the longest-running, best mediocre Canucks Hockey Podcast.
It's C4 with Chris and Anna.
Hi, it's another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast. You learned that all from the introduction that we paid big money for just moments ago. I'm Chris, Anna's with me as always, but we have a much better person to join us this week. It's elevating the show like tenfold. Fresh out of the Bochford Project, we got Ariel Lalonde. You may know her on the socials as at Ali Selly. Welcome, Ariel.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, totally our pleasure.
Thanks for joining us.
We like to shake things up a little bit every now and again, get out of our groove. So, yeah, absolute pleasure to have you with us.
It's nice to have someone other than Anna who's smart.
That's a bit of a reach. I wouldn't go so far as to say I think I just post a lot, which
that's what I go for too. And then hope that people
that,
get confused.
Well, I'd say that you guys are pretty on the nose. I consider you guys to have you have a smart, elevated podcast. And I like to post through it because the only way out is through. The Vancouver Canucks motto.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like the rejected one after, what was it, like Passion? I can't even remember any of the terrible mottos they had. But yeah.
We're all Canucks was like the motto for an era.
But what was the other one? Pressure is a privilege? I don't know. I can't even remember. They were so terrible.
Yeah, they've been through a lot.
Yeah. And we have to.
Well, it's the routine of a Canucks fan. If the longer you are a fan, the more you have gone through, and going through a lot is really an understatement. But Ariel, as we had mentioned, joins us fresh off the Bochford Project. You might also know her elsewhere. From what I understand, you have worked with Canucks Army, Offside News. What else have you been up to?
So Offside News Co. is a site that I co-founded with my dear editor-in-chief, Avery Beaumont. It's a hockey blog. We mostly cover serious hockey unseriously.
We love that. We support that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we like to describe ourselves as a mix of The Onion and your, run-of-the-mill hockey blog. So we like to keep it fun, keep it fresh over there. And I'm also working with Canucks Army. I'm a weekly columnist there. Sunday, sometimes Monday, I do 3 stars of the week over there, and occasionally I will be handed over a Stan Cheese column from my dear friend Wyatt Art. So, it's a fun.
We don't like Wyatt here. He knows what he did.
He knows what he did.
Oh, trust me. If you know Wyatt, he knows what he did too.
Yeah, exactly.
He knows what he did too.
For sure. He's aware.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, again, thanks for joining us. I think that's like the 7th time I've said that in the introduction. But what we're planning on doing this episode is doing what we normally get into. We're going to get into Rewind. The week that was, the trade deadline has come and gone. The Canucks made a splash, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Now, that might not be the splash we all were expecting.
Maybe it was a ripple.
But there was a splash, right? So we'll talk about that. The Vancouver Canucks had a few games. We'll talk about that. We're recording fresh off of one tonight against the Dallas Stars. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the Bochford Project and everything that Ariel wants to share with you, our listener, being that she is the one of 2 smart voices on a 3-person show tonight. So, you know what? Without getting too deeper into the self-deprecation, let's get into Rewind. If you as a Vancouver Canucks fan have been living under a rock and weren't aware, Brock Besser still, as Anna put on our rundown, somehow in brackets, still a Vancouver Canuck. So is Elias Pettersson. So is P.S. Sutter. So are pretty much everyone not named Carson Soucy.
Yeah, it's one of the, disappointed but not exactly surprised moments maybe of the deadline is that, like, in a really good market for sellers, Canucks couldn't find a deal that they were happy with for Brock Besser.
Mhm.
And then to add, insult to injury, we had Patrick Colvin just selling Brock Besser down the river in the post-deadline press conference. So, yeah. Ariel, what were your feelings immediately after the deadline closed?
It took so many hours for all, like, the finalized deals to come in that it really felt like once the deadline actually closed, it didn't feel over until that night of. And my feelings were just, yeah, sure. Like, I did not think, against all of the reports and what we were led to believe, I really did not think that Brock was going to get moved. And it was because I think they weren't going to be able to get return.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't because I think out of the goodness of their hearts I think it was a genuine fear of, like, oh, we're about to lose him for nothing. And unlike the general manager, I don't think it's because there's something wrong with our beautiful Brock Besser. No, quite the contrary. I think it's because they spent the whole year talking about how bad things are and how difficult it's been on the team. And then they're surprised when they can't get anyone to send their players to the team.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It does seem crazy to me. I was listening to Too Many Men today and their sort of post-deadline podcast, and Shayna Goldman, who's just very smart, but, like, from her outside perspective, I really like what she said, that, like, why didn't Patrick Colvin just say, oh, like, actually, we really value Brock Besser. We value him at such a high price, so people weren't offering this high price that we value him at, when really it was just like, oh no, he's bad. No one's offering anything good for him. Like, there was better ways to handle it than he did.
Well, the Canucks are famous for having really, very, very tight PR.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They've never once said something they shouldn't say.
I know.
My thought on sort of Alvin saying what he is saying, not that if I was in his position, I would have said it myself, was thinking like, oh, I'm going to play some 5D chess here. I'm going to negotiate through the media, let the player agent know the player is worth nothing more than a pair of sticks and a used jockstrap. And we're going to re-sign him at a discount because, boy, I played, the 5D chess here. Like, that's the only thing I can take out of that.
Carolina realizing that maybe 5D chess doesn't always work. Seeing as we had, star of Carolina's future on the Dallas team scoring against the Canucks tonight. So, like, yeah, I mean, I don't believe that. I do like Elliot Friedman saying that he loves the post-deadline trade press conferences because general managers are so tired and sleep-deprived that they say all kinds of crazy things. So, yeah, I think he was just too friggin' honest.
Yeah, that's like the downfall of, and I say this with a lot of love because, controversial statement, I have quite liked Alvin as a general manager. Even this year, I think, especially last year, remember everyone loved him.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone loved him because we were doing well, and naturally when we're doing poorly, it's, who can we find to pin this on? And he's definitely had a past of saying things where I'm like, oh, I wouldn't necessarily say that. But there is in a sense, there is a, I don't know how to word this in a way that doesn't make me sound like an angry Redditor. There is
Go ahead.
There's a cultural honesty that comes with a lot of people from Sweden, especially in the league. And that's why people are so angry with Pettersson all the time.
Yeah. I mean,
I find it very unfair because I find that as a whole, yes, maybe you don't always want honesty from your general manager, especially when that honesty is cruel. But I would rather have it because then we can complain about it instead of it happening behind closed doors,
Yeah, and I have always said for a long time that, like, especially at the beginning of Pettersson as a Canuck, if you guys were European, you would find him very funny. Like, he is, like, super dry, and he can be very funny, I think. But yeah, I think Canucks fans are too jaded with, honest Jim betting, where he would just turn his cards.
Another time.
Like flip them on the table so that everyone can see. But I do think Patrick Olvin and President Jim are a lot smarter than that. But yeah, I do think that wasn't the best move. And I just think, like, their two options, right? Like, were re-sign Brock, like, move further than you want to move because this guy has shown extreme loyalty to the franchise in really difficult times. So move further than you want to move on him. Or sell slightly lower than you want to sell on him because he deserves a fresh start and that's the best way to get any value from him. And they didn't do either.
Well, getting the getting value part, I would have rather seen the Vancouver Canucks do if they don't have a plan to continue to try to re-sign Besser, or let's in this case Suter, who is another restricted free agent. I also accept that maybe the offers that were being made weren't quality.
And we do understand there were like big chips to fall and that maybe a lot of teams were holding off.
Well, yeah, like the Rantanen deal was within the final hour, I want to say.
It was really late.
But if you're finding that there aren't deals to be had with the players that are currently on your roster, like the UFAs that you're looking to potentially move, the Vancouver Canucks front office has been doing something that the previous front office failed to understand. Maximize deadline cap space. And they could have put themselves in a position where they started to weaponize that by taking on a contract, being sort of the third team, and find themselves a prospect or a pick. Like was it 12, 15 million they've left on the table? It's gone.
Like, what was the point of all that finagling during the year if you're not going to buy yourself some leverage in a tough situation?
Like, I get why they were doing it, but you had another opportunity available to you. And you can't tell me there isn't a team out there that wouldn't have minded tossing a contract. And I'm not asking the Vancouver Canucks to go and take on a multi-year deal to alleviate the pressure. Help a contender out who needs to free up some space. Sweeten it with something else in return. Like, that part, I think, is what upsets me more than not finding a dance partner for Brock and
that's
PS.
Such a good point. I really like that you brought that up. I'm coming off a weekend of, I wrote a 4,000 word article about three-way trades just because we saw so many in the last few months. And I hadn't really thought about it that way until you just said that now, that it's very possible that even, being that middle party in a trade could have gotten them something this summer. It happened last year. When the Devils retained on Chris Tanev's salary last year, I believe that entirely sweetened the deal when they ended up picking up Markstrom that summer. And I think that was definitely part of it. And, not to alarm everyone with Jacob Markstrom, I know that's a soft that's a soft spot. But it does feel like, at least from my point of view, the wasted potential here isn't the potential of the return that we could have or could have not gotten for Besser. The wasted potential is like all of the cap space just to do nothing. And, I think it was Carolina's GM, it was Tulsky who said this, saying that, the Rantanen deal took so long that everything else we wanted to do ended up not happening because we were focused on one, which is also, I saw a lot of Canes fans saying, "Oh, that's a bit too honest. You would have to, waterboard that information out of me." I wouldn't say that to the press. But, Friedman's quote about them just being so tired and kind of just saying anything in front of the cameras. I don't blame them. A lot of fans say they want honesty from their front offices, and then as soon as they get it, they're like, no, too honest. Yeah. Too honest. We didn't want to know that. And I think there is a healthy medium here, at least with the Canucks, of there was so much mystery behind the whole Petey and Miller situation that upset people. But now that we are getting some forthright comments that may be a little too biting, there has to be a middle of, okay, we have the information we need, but we don't need more than that.
Yeah. And I agree. I just think, and I don't think it's necessarily shooting themselves in the foot in terms of trade value. It's just disrespectful, I think, to Brock Besser at some point. And then we have tonight Brock Besser not having his A on his jersey. And like, I know it's been said over and over that it's more important to the fans than the players, letters on jerseys. But having that happen at this moment in time, given, you know, the sort of A's that have gone through the organization, like we've had JT Miller act like he has acted and gone through like this huge controversy. He kept his A. Like, are we really stripping an A over that? It just seems
Are we
a bit crazy.
stripping the A? Was it a strip of the A?
I mean, who knows? It's just one game.
Chronological roll around the carousel, which happened to occur 3/4 way through the season.
It just seems odd timing to give it to Marcus Pedersen, who's been great, and solid leader, I'm sure, but like has just got here.
Yeah. So the Vancouver Canucks, didn't trade Besser, didn't trade Suter, didn't trade Petey, didn't trade their cap space for something in return. They did, however, trade Carson Soucy to New York. Now, trading Soucy to New York was accomplished by Soucy agreeing to waive his, I think he had a no trade, like a 10 team or something.
Yeah.
Right. But the critical piece to this was that JT apparently talked Carson into going to the Rangers. That helps the Vancouver Canucks in freeing up this cap space they're not going to put to use. It also helps out sort of next season in regards to that contract not being on the books. The Vancouver Canucks, get a 3rd round pick, could turn into anything. I want to touch on the fact, though, that Soucy, having now moved on, has elevated opportunities for DPD, who seems to be on this team moving forward. Mancini is getting ice time. Was the Soucy move the right one for a team who, quote unquote, is in it to win it still? Because you now have much younger blue liners in place of a Carson Soucy who, had a pretty decent postseason last year.
I mean, go ahead, Ariel.
We were talking about the different slogans that the Canucks have used over the years, and I'm pretty sure they're still actively using "all together, all in." I find that funny because this year it's been "not together, most definitely not all in."
Yeah, sometimes in, other times not.
Yeah, it's I think this is a great example of that, and I don't know what it says that both times we traded someone to the Rangers this year, they both scored in their first game with New York. However, that's not super concerning because the Rangers are still bad.
Yeah, they still remain bad.
They lost to the Blue Jackets tonight by a heavy deficit, so...
Yeah, and if JT had still been here, it would have been complete disaster. Like, there's no way he was bringing his game back in Vancouver.
There's nothing to worry about. I mean, when I found out that we all kind of knew that Soucy was on the block anyways, that wasn't a secret.
Yeah.
When that was announced, I'm pretty sure I saw it and I sent it to I sent it to a coworker, I think, and I just said a blockbuster trade incoming, Carson Soucy.
Yeah.
The Carson Soucy blockbuster. But truly, I mean, how I feel about this team right now, especially this week, is just, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think they definitely just looked at what they had and they went, well, you're probably not going to replicate what you had going on last year. And at this point, if they haven't accepted that they're probably not making the postseason, then I don't know what's going on because I accepted that months ago. So, it's not like Soucy's going to have a great playoff run because there are no playoffs to speak of.
I mean, like, I've been on the kind of train that I'm just like, Canucks probably will make the playoffs, but that shouldn't really be an indicator of anything. But if they make the playoffs, it's because the West is so mid. And, like, they're not going to make a run. So, yes, Soucy's playoff pedigree isn't really much to speak of. Obviously, deeply saddening from a point of view of him just being the most beautiful player on the team / maybe the league. Gorgeous man. But like
people don't know that.
People don't appreciate it.
One of my friends who writes about the Rangers messaged me the day after, I think in his first game with the Rangers, and he was just like, That's Carson Soucy.
Yeah, I mean, he's called Carson. He's from Viking, Alberta. He doesn't seem like he should look like that, but he does. Yeah, I've had friends that know nothing about hockey, and they said, "Oh, that's sad."
It would be amazing if he was good at hockey. Like, what if he had all of that going for him?
God doesn't give with both hands, apparently. But I will say, like, my immediate reaction before I heard about the JT Miller call, about him convincing him to go, I was just thinking, oh God, I hope he wasn't in the camp of hating JT. And then also because Eric Brandstrom has ended up at the Rangers as well at this deadline, I was just like, wow, a lot of former players who played with JT, I really hope they weren't thinking, oh God, at last I'm free of him. Like, but I mean, JG's phone call convinced him, so maybe Carson Soucy doesn't really care about playing with JT or not. But it was just like such a shrug deal. It's like, yeah, okay, 3rd round pick, fine. Like, that's fine. But the fact that it didn't didn't act as a prelude.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it was a shrug deal because it wasn't the prelude. Like, when it occurred, I think people saw this as the prelude to, oh, they freed up a contract, they freed up some decent space. Allvin's looking to cook. And maybe he was looking to cook. The problem is the supplier didn't show up to deliver what was needed to make whatever dish he happened to be thinking of. But yeah, it was, by your definition, a shrug deal.
We love to make tortured metaphors on this show, in case you didn't know that already. Now you do.
It's what makes us the best mediocre Canucks podcast out there. So yeah, deadline done. Canucks are who they are. Allvin could have come out and said, I trust in this team. The drama's gone. Let's give her, boys. And maybe he said that in private. Did not say that during his post-deadline presser. Was shaky as all heck as he could be on house radio when Sportsnet was chatting with him. Sat got him shook. And credit to Sat for asking, the tough questions. I make light the house radio, but there are many who work at 650 who do, put in that solid effort in a non-competitive terrestrial market. But before the deadline had actually taken place, the Vancouver Canucks had a couple of games. Actually, a game. To be more appropriate, they had a game after the deadline. But the Anaheim Ducks rolled into town, and the Vancouver Canucks, having been beaten handily by the Ducks of Anaheim, a stalwart in the NHL, if you happen to be looking at the bottom of the standings. Anna and I were of the opinion that the Canucks have to win, right? Like, it was the question mark. And, spoiler alert, when they did, convincingly.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those weird games where you're like, oh yeah, Canucks completely thrashed Anaheim except by 1 goal. Like, it was a weird game.
Well, completely thrashed in so much as it was the first game in a while that the Vancouver Canucks hadn't scored first, which apparently that's a bad thing if you're the Vancouver Canucks, don't score the first goal. It was the type of game where Vancouver had themselves a 2-goal lead. As a Canucks fan, we all know, worst lead the Vancouver Canucks could ever possibly have forevermore. History will repeat itself. And when the Canucks had that 3-1 lead going into the third period, by golly, did the pessimist in me get real excited when Dumoulin scores to make it 3-2.
Yeah.
Are we being harsh here, Ariel? Like,
I think that when I think about the Anaheim Ducks, I watch the Ducks on occasion. It actually started, I want to say, 2 seasons back when the Ducks and the Canucks were just both doing so horribly in the Pacific Division that I was like, you know what? I might as well see what our competition isn't. And
like that.
The Ducks have not improved that much, but at the same time are a very different team, if that makes any sense. And it was just when they beat us, it was straight up embarrassing. I don't want to think about that ever again.
Yeah.
That was just bad. And you're very right that, like, this year you can say, oh, wow, the Canucks looked really great tonight. Like, they looked very on, they looked really sharp. And then but the score doesn't reflect it,
Mhm.
You can have like a 1-goal deficit game and say, well, the Canucks played amazingly. And that's just what the season has been, because the whole thing has been just very low event, even when they're winning. Just because, the production isn't there. And there could be reasons for that, multiple reasons for that. Like most people, I would hope I don't think it's just one problem. The issue isn't just, like PD and Brock aren't scoring. Like, there are clearly there's a lot more going on than, it obviously affects it a lot, but it's more than just two people who aren't scoring. And when the deficit was cut, I wasn't afraid, honestly. I just kind of thought, you know what? Whatever happens, happens. The Canucks aren't known for being that great in OT. However, part of me was hoping it would go to a shootout, because can the Canucks beat the Ducks in a shootout? I would put money on it.
Yeah, God. That's the thing. I'm just like, as you're talking, I'm just thinking about, like, you can look at it one of two ways, right? Like, you can look at it as, like, Canucks holding on and, like, good teams win even, like, on off nights, blah, blah, blah. But you can also look at it as Anaheim Ducks are objectively a stupid team. Like,
oh yeah,
they injured their own goalie by shoving Drew O'Connor into him. Like,
Who got penalized?
which I think is a fair penalty. He did, like, touch John Gibson, but I don't think he would have been injured if, like, the contact hadn't been there from, was it Hellison? And then, like, instead of, like, they literally, like, hamper their own goalie by holding defensemen in front of him, like, and blocking up his crease with Canucks defensemen, like, in the goal that almost wasn't. Like, they're a stupid team. And then Trevor Zegras picks a fight with Connor Garland, who, despite the size difference, like, it's Connor Garland, don't do it.
So you say Trevor Zegras picked a fight with Garland. I kind of feel Garland picked a fight with Zegras.
I mean, that's
like, those
Connor
two
Garland,
go
but
at
yes.
it. They both throw down the gloves, and then Connor's like, get up. Like, Connor could have dummied him straight off, but no, Connor wanted to dance, and dance they did. Like, credit to Connor for introducing Zegras to the finer aspects of a Vancouver team with confidence.
Oh yeah, and you just know that Zegras was running his mouth the entire game.
Yeah.
I think he's been known to be quiet once in his life.
Yep.
And that can sometimes be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on depending on the day. But no, I would agree with that. I loved that moment just because, yeah, like, Connor clearly challenges him, and it's like, all right, sure, let's do this. We're about to win anyways. It literally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that definitely does look like, Zegras has been around the league enough now that I think the whole, like, oh, he's a young kid that needs to be taught a lesson. He has too inflated of an ego. It's a bit too far for that now. Like, he's too old to be doing all that.
Yeah.
We're the same age. But still,
Oh, yeah.
he's too old to be pulling the immaturity card. Like, get over it. Like,
Yeah.
get over yourself. You're still on a bad team, Yet another deadline passes and you're still not traded like everyone says is going to happen.
Yeah. I used to like Trevor Zegras, I'm not gonna lie, like, because I kind of thought, oh, like, all these dinosaurs getting mad at him doing skills. Isn't it fun when a young hockey player's doing skills? But he's kind of underwhelming overall. Like,
oh yeah, I still think he's a lot of fun. Very, very fun player, doing a lot for that market. The actual hockey,
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
To be fair, he has been quite snake-bitten the last 2 years. His injury history is not great, but I do think that when you play a certain style of hockey,
You got to be able to back it up a bit.
it's something that you risk. And not that I'm saying anything about the way this is run, but I find a lot of the ex-US national team of that 2019 draft class, a lot of them seem to be very injury-prone, and I'm not sure if that's a coincidence or if that's more like, did we lean into too far too soon on the whole, we're skill only, you don't have to learn how to be physical out there, it's fine, nothing bad will happen.
Wow.
Maybe just a coincidence, I don't know. But
That would be an interesting article.
yeah, I don't want to go as far to say a conspiracy, but, I think that fight is a perfect example of Because we've all seen Connor Garland fight. He does not let anything hold him back. I like to call him Scrappy Doo, actually, because he's small and likes to scrap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally tweeted out after that fight that Trevor Zegras forgot the scrappy part of Scrappy Doo.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
There you go. We're
Yeah.
on the same
Also,
wavelength.
Well, it maybe goes to show that he didn't put enough stock in his opponent. Like, that fight really, I love how we're talking about the last 5 seconds of a game that they had already won. But it was the most interesting thing, other than the whole Gibson incident.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was a beautiful save. Like, it was frustrating in the moment, and I'm sorry for Brock Besser, but, like, that was just beautiful goaltending.
Gibson, he deserves better. Like, I mean, not that I want, like, their kid goalie to have to suffer, but, like, every year it's been the whole, like, does Gibson finally want out, and yet he suffers another year in Anaheim, like, at Disneyland. Like, it's honestly impressive how much he puts up with. But no, I think that, just especially in the last few minutes, it made me think, like, do you guys not do, like, video? Like, do you not prep?
Yeah, do you not know who he is?
Yeah, like, and it just made me think, like, are you sure you want to do that, son? I'm not sure that's a good idea. But yeah, there were a few moments of excitement, and honestly, for a trade deadline week, it was needed. It was a rough one.
Mm-hmm.
So, looking at that game, if there was one player who really stood out, it seemed to be Petey. He only got himself on the score sheet with an assist, but he was, about 85% in the face-off circle, which for the Vancouver Canucks is a godsend.
For Pedersen, that never happens.
Yeah, well, exactly. But it was a prelude to what we would see on Friday when Vancouver was able to dress that third-round pick as their new replacement to Carson Soucy after the trade deadline. Minnesota rolled into town, and not only did the Vancouver Canucks score a power play marker, and I should give credit, they got a power play goal against the Ducks, but who was it that scored a power play goal scoring the way he once did? But Elias Pettersson. He looked like a man who had refound his game. I mean, I'm going to let it out now. He had 20 out of 22 wins in the face-off circle against the Wild. Apparently, he's only one of 2 centers in the league to have that many in one game.
Wow.
The other being Sidney Crosby.
Oh, yeah. I did hear that statistic, yeah. Alvin and Rutherford loved that one.
It was such an impassioned game that in my complex hockey pool, Petey, who had been cut earlier in the week because statistically he just hadn't been contributing to the person's roster who had him, was bid on by 3 different people within seconds.
Yeah. Petey's back.
Well,
don't curse him. Don't curse him.
Also, we did watch the game tonight where he was okay.
Yeah,
he was still better than he has been.
I agreed. He wasn't
he wasn't 3 days ago, but he was definitely today.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
But the Vancouver Canucks did beat the Wild 3-1. It was an entertaining game of hockey if you happen to be a Vancouver Canucks fan. Maybe a little stressful for a spell prior to that empty net goal, because it felt to me like Minnesota was doing everything that they could possibly do to cause the Vancouver Canucks to make a mistake. At one point, I think the shots were 35 to 15. Vancouver ended up getting a handful of shots late in the period to make it a more respectable 38 to 20.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I didn't it felt entertaining. It felt like Petey was back. It felt like the Vancouver Canucks had some confidence that they had been lacking. They were only up 2-1 until the garbage goal at the end.
That's Canucks hockey, baby. Marginal gains. Yeah, it's a stressful way to live, but it does seem to be the way Canucks win their hockey games.
They have looked a lot
season.
more confident this week in general,
Mm-hmm.
Even tonight, which was overall not a great game for them. It is the Stars who are, I would say, a cup favorite right now. So expectations had to be adjusted.
With a freshly signed Rantanen on the roster.
Yes.
Yeah,
Although
you know.
without Rupert Hintz, without Heiskanen, and on the wrong end of a back-to-back. But
And they were still great, which goes to show
Yeah.
they might just go for it.
it's true. Like, it really, like, was impressive from the Stars, considering, like, you're just like, oh yeah, like, they don't have that player and that player, and they did have to, like, score, I think, 3 goals in a row trying to almost overturn their deficit against the Oilers last night. But yeah, you still have Jason Robinson, and like Rantanen had the empty netter, so like, yeah, they're just good. They are really good.
Yeah, and I think that you do need to kind of adjust your expectations depending on what team they're playing. You know, and I always say adjust your expectations, and then the total opposite happens. But at least you adjusted, right? Like, you know, you never think that they're going to beat someone top of the standings and then get beaten by the Ducks. But again, that's
That's
Canucks
the
hockey.
Canuck way.
Expect the unexpected. And, you know, I can think of a million other games that everyone thought they were going to win, they didn't. A couple game 7s that come to mind. But that's
Oh.
neither here nor there. There is a kind of I've been thinking a lot about Elias Pettersson, which is a great statement.
Yeah,
Any
haven't
day
we
of the
all?
week, I've been thinking a lot about Elias Pettersson. But this week, he does have this kind of aura or confidence about him that he hasn't had in a very long time. I don't know what that might be about. I don't know if he's just been feeling better, if there was some kind of turn in maybe like his nagging injury or like some kind of conversation that was had that maybe had things looking in another direction. And it doesn't mean he's going to be back to his old self tomorrow,
Mhm.
but it did remind me of, especially after the Minnesota game, there is this meme that it made me think of you've probably seen it before somewhere on the interwebs, of it's Nicole Kidman right after she signed her divorce papers with Tom Cruise, and it looks like she's like the happiest woman you've ever seen in your entire life, and that's to me what Pettersson has looked like this week. So
I love
I
that.
don't know. I mean, I don't know what he managed to escape, but
Or who he managed to escape from.
or who. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is
Can't
JT Miller Tom Cruise? Discuss.
He's taller.
He is taller, but the hair is similar, and maybe the sort of opinions on the political spectrum may be similar too.
Their love of the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah, they both do their
Don't
own
be
stunts.
disparaging Top Gun now.
And I do love Top Gun. That's the funniest. The funniest part is that I love Top Gun.
I think I like Top Gun. It's entertaining. You just have to sort of put a perspective on it. But yeah. I do agree, and he looked so frustrated after the game today in a way like that made me think he is so engaged with this, and he knows that he can be better now. So yes, I do hope we have turned this corner, but
Well, Talkett said good things about PD this week. He said that PD is moving his legs and he has looked like an entirely different player in the last 48 to 72 hours. I can't remember the last time Talkett had anything truly positive to say.
yeah, I mean,
Like, if
talking
anything,
about
it's
honest
been a backhanded compliment.
people being honest with the media, like Rick Tockett's, like we've always praised him for being honest, and yeah, he's tonight is no exception. He's kind of said Besson, DeBrust, and earned their ice time at the end of the game. So yeah, Tuck is.
You know who earned his ice time? Derek Forbort,
Oh, that's
who
for
has
sure.
the number 1 GA and 60 over the PK. When game recognizes game, Derek Forbort scores his goals.
And that minor hockey player, the Timbits hockey player, who said that Derek Forbort was his favorite player. Like,
Oh, man.
game recognizes game, man. That is the funniest thing. Like, you can't, like, I just love it when sport's so weird like that.
That's like the bit I've had for a few years now. Again, because he's now played for so many teams. me and my friends sometimes enjoy doing this, but I used to say that my favorite Vancouver Canuck was Jimmy Vesey.
Oh, I love Jimmy Vesey because he left his car in Ottawa. Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
And then I'd say, oh, well, now Jimmy Vesey's my favorite Toronto Maple Leaf. And for a while, he was my favorite Ranger again. And now he's an member of the Colorado Avalanche. So now I guess he can be my favorite Av, my only favorite Av, because I don't acknowledge the Avalanche. But yeah, sometimes it's those kids know what's up sometimes. And Derek Forward is he the Canucks savior? I think we need to have the discussion. The MVP of the season, Derek.
We do not have enough time on this episode to deconstruct that.
Okay. But I do think that's also worthy of an article.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, the Vancouver Canucks got, 2 out of a possible 3 wins. And if anyone listened to last week's episode, it's a whole lot better than what Anna and I had thought.
Wait, but didn't you say 2 out of 3 too, but you said overtime? Or did you say overtime loss?
I think it was an OTL. I think I was giving the Canucks 3 points.
Okay.
I'm old, Anna. Like, you expect me to remember
I know.
this stuff?
This is why we need to write it down, because we write it down and then I leave the post-it somewhere else. But yeah, I said 2 points, so, shame on me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so negative.
You are. I mean, I've been wanting to talk to you about it.
Yeah. But we both said lost to Dallas. I know that for sure, so we were right about that.
Yeah, but going into the week that will be, the Vancouver Canucks have 3 games at home, 1 on the road. NHL scheduling is phenomenal in how it's going to structure it for the Vancouver Canucks. They get to take the Habs on at home on Tuesday night. Then they head off to Calgary for a game on Wednesday. They then get a couple of nights off to recover from that, at which point they take on Chicago Blackhawks on future Vancouver Canuck Connor Bedard before they have another back-to-back game on Sunday night against the hockey club from Utah.
Yeah. Can I just say something really upsetting? That during the Sportsnet broadcast tonight, they advertised the Utah game, and they're using the abbreviation UTA versus VAN. And, when you have a 4-letter team name, I don't think that's acceptable to... I know it's 3 letters and 3 letters, but, it was just really upsetting to see UTA as, the abbreviation. I don't like that.
UTA. Sounds like an airport.
Yeah. Which it may well be, but
it could be.
I don't know. I didn't like it. It's like when people shorten June. It's only 4 letters.
Well, the H stands for hockey.
Oh, that's so true.
That would be a great slogan for them to use that I just gave them for free.
Yeah, as we know, they definitely listen. So that one's for free. Thanks, Ariel.
I'll just DM them and say, hey, for future use, you don't have to pay me, just a thought.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Well, I mean, as Anna and I are apt to say, all the NHL teams listen to our show.
For
so they already know. So Habs, Flames, Blackhawks, Hockey Club. I'm sorry. I still struggle with that.
But it's so funny. If they kept it, it would be hilarious. But we both, we all know that there's no comedy in the NHL. So,
yeah. So, ladies, how many of those 8 points will the Vancouver Canucks get, and where are they going to get them from?
I don't want to be that girly again, but I don't think it's against Montreal. Calgary, obviously that's Canucks, one of the rivals for, worst playoff team in the whole NHL. Vancouver and Calgary battling it out, so big game. You got to think they beat the Blackhawks. Can Utah do the double? Potentially. I say 4 points. Is that?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think they're going to get 4. I think they're going to beat Montreal and they're going to beat Chicago.
Ooh.
And I think the Flames, I would... no, I can see Calgary winning that. And Utah, it was a 2-1 terrible game last time, which was truly some of the most boring hockey I've seen all year. So I have little faith in that already. Let Utah take that home. But yeah, I think 4 points.
Okay.
And I'm just going to say they're going to beat Montreal because I always bank on Montreal losing in situations where they actually have a chance.
Yeah, and they actually start looking good.
Yeah, I've learned.
Yeah, je me souviens. I do remember
they're the Eastern Conference Canucks. That's what I like to think. Truly.
High praise.
Yeah. I'm gonna say Utah and Chicago.
Okay. So I'm giving them dubs against the Habs, Blackhawks, and Hockey Club.
Oof.
Though I will concede, if they lose to the Canadian, they'll beat the Flames. Like,
Yeah.
one of those two games is a win, but I actually see them beating the Blackhawks and Hockey Club. Yeah.
You're just gonna keep saying it until it sounds normal.
It's like trying on a pair of shoes that doesn't quite fit. The more you put your foot into them, the more your foot hurts.
I think that is an excellent way to describe the NHL, by the way.
They're trying to make it work and it's just not working.
Yeah.
And then by the time you get used to it, they have a new name or they've been moved again.
Yeah, but you spent the money already, so.
Anyhow, you're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Anna and Chris.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
For longtime listeners of the show, they know that one of the first people that we tried to get on this podcast was Jason Botchford. So some backstory here. I've known Botch since I got involved in Canucks social media, which I'm old. So it's like, I don't know, what, the 1900s, something like that. But we only ever had Botch on our show once. It was by far one of the greatest interviews that we had. Former co-host Matt Lee and I had a conversation with Jason. Jason committed to the fact that the Vancouver Canucks were going to beat the Edmonton Oilers. Matt said, how serious are you about that? Because at the time, the Vancouver Canucks weren't playing so hot. Edmonton was. And Jason's like, if the Vancouver Canucks lose to the Edmonton Oilers, I will get an Edmonton Oilers logo tattooed on my butt. So the Vancouver Canucks got out to a hot lead in that game, and Edmonton started storming back. And making matters worse, Matt and I, we promoted the living daylights out of that Botchford bet. Like we just went nuts. Botch, to his credit, said he would have held true to his bet.
Of course he did.
Thankfully, the Vancouver Canucks won. But the reason I sort of share this story is that Botch joined C4 in our early days when he didn't have to. He supported so many within what would have been defined at the time as the new media space. Yeah. And there are a multitude of stories of how people could reach out to him at any point in time. He would give advice, and it was just that. He didn't ask for anything in return. I feel he was one of the few in the early days of social media members that was genuine to all of us. And it's obviously a shame that he's left us so soon, but his legacy lives on with the Botchford Project. And we've had previous participants of the Botchford Project on our show. And Ariel, you are one of the more recent participants. And what Anna, I thought, would be perfect to for you to do is to explain to us, like, what was that experience like, and how is it springboarding you into sort of where it is you want to go in the future?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I first started thinking about applying for the Botchford Project last year. And applications had already closed for the last season. This was maybe around December or January of last season. And that's actually when I started regularly writing about the Canucks. I'd kind of been writing off and on about them for about a year by then. And because I watched the Canucks a bit in the 2010s. And then I kind of fell off for a couple years in there. And then I started watching again in 2020, actually, during COVID hockey. And from then on, I was like totally committed back in. And so I started writing regularly about the Canucks December 2023. And 24 was the Botsford edition last year. And I remember seeing it and thinking, oh, I'm so glad that they do this. Because Botch was actually one of the first members of the Canucks media I was really exposed to, found when he was still with the province. And I read a piece that he did basically calling out the hypocrisy of the hockey market with the City and Twins. You know, and I had never seen someone write like that about this sport ever in my life. And I didn't realize that you could write about hockey and still be able to retain your voice, and you could still be funny, and you could be angry, and you could be literally anything you wanted to and still get your point across. And that was very influential to me. I know I read everything he did until he passed, and I'm so glad that this program is there to remember him by. So I want to say it was around the end of last season when I had a couple people approach me and say, hey, this is happening again next season. It happens every year, and you should really think about applying. Little did they know, I'd already kind of thought about it.
You were just like,
yeah.
already sneakily thinking about it.
a little bit, but I barely had any experience. Again, I'd only really been writing about the team for a few months. Even though I thought I knew them pretty well, I was like, I'm still really new to the whole writing thing. And yeah, Wyatt Arndt was actually the first person who found my Canucks writing. I'd been writing about them for a month, maybe, and he actually made a submission to my website through email, because he didn't even see my social media or anything, and he linked the article, and he said, hey, whoever wrote this, keep it up. This is really good.
Nice.
And that meant a whole lot to me. And then he ended up connecting on social media later on. And yeah, he was really one of the first people to also, he's talked to me a lot about Botch's legacy as well, and saying, well, I reached out to you because, again, before Botch, there really wasn't a lot of people opening the space up to bloggers and members of the new media and podcasters and people who also matter, but didn't go the traditional route of getting into media and journalism. And I really want to continue that because that's what he did for me. And so he was really the first person to reach out and say I should apply. Again, the first person to find my writing. And then this summer is when David Quadrelli reached out to me and said, would you be interested in joining Canucks Army for the upcoming season? Of course, that was an automatic yes. I was very excited. And he's also been very kind to me and a really good mentor in that department, really letting me try a lot out. Really my first true professional writing gig, which before I started was very nerve-wracking. But he said the same thing. He said, you know, like Botch's legacy is very important around here, and I think this is something that he would want us to keep doing. And again, when applications opened, it was also every day over like our Slack messaging service. Jeff Patterson would send it every day and say, reminder, if there's anyone in here who's interested in doing it this year, applications close on this date. And so the process of application, if anyone is wondering, the date that you normally get to go to the arena and actually spend a day as a member of Canucks Media is normally in the winter, usually mid to late January. And applications typically open in November and close late November, early December. They go over your applications during the holidays, and they normally reach out in the new year to let you know if you've been selected. So I believe the application deadline this year was November 29th. I sent my application in November 29th.
Of course.
That's the way.
Yeah. I was just like, as that's what I would do.
And I had started writing it some weeks before, but I was so meticulous. I was like, oh, it has to be perfect. When really, that's not really what it's about. It's about learning.
Yeah. And it's about the idea. Like, fundamentally, I think, like, give yourself credit. Like, that's what they're looking for, is, like, to have the ideas. And it's not being the finished product or anything. But it's, yeah, they're looking for original ideas.
Yeah. And it's, and they did actually, I believe I spoke to a few people who help run it, and they said that this year they actually didn't get a lot of applicants until the end, which is part of the reason why it was being pushed so much. And saying, reminder, is that they got a bunch of applicants towards the last few days, and for a few weeks it was kind of slow, when the year before it actually had been the complete inverse. So you never know. I'd say it's truly, you never know if you don't try. And the applications are done, anonymously. They take all your information to get in touch with you. But I believe the process is they are read by Chris Faber first. And then I think they probably go through other people at the team. I'm not exactly certain. But the person who has the final say on the applicants is actually Jason's wife, Catherine Botchford. And she has the final say on applicants. And I think that's also really important how involved she is, and really appreciate that. So that's the process, if anyone is wondering. And the actual application, I don't know if they ask different questions every year or if it's the same ones, but I can tell you that this year it's very simple. It doesn't take you too long. However, I believe they just take your name and your phone number, your email, and there are only 2 application questions. I believe the first one was you're basically pitching them a story. If you could write anything for this iteration of the Botchford Project, what would it be? So they want your story pitch. And then I believe the second question was something general, like tell us why you think that you would be a great candidate for this program, something like that. And both of them have not word counts, they have character counts. So they're very specific with exactly how long they could be, which not only tests your experience and capabilities as a writer and an editor, self-editing, it also obviously helps their process going through all of them. But you really only have that much space to get your point across. So that's the application project. It's all it's done online through a portal, and the team is very clear about when applications open and when they close. It's all over their social media. It's on their website. You should be able to access it when it opens back up next season. And yeah, so that's the application process. Do you guys want to hear details about?
Absolutely. Like, I just wanted to comment also, just on like the project itself. Like, I just think it's like so important. It's so great that Kat is so invested in it, and like the legacy is really there. Like, I think it's so clear, and Wyatt reaching out to you, like Wyatt, like, as much as we give him crap, like, he does actually really care about new writers, but being he
still knows what he's done.
Yeah, he does know what he's done.
The grudge will never die.
He can be such a curmudgeon, but I say that with love,
right?
Because he has quite literally handed me every career opportunity I have had thus far.
And like him reaching out to people, like, and actually being outgoing is not necessarily something he would have done in the past, and like that really shows like what Butch taught him, I think. Like, I know when I was writing my silly little blog when I was back in London, Dan Murphy read my blog, and that was like huge for me, and that's like why I kept writing, kept being on Twitter, and why I kept talking about the Canucks, why I ended up on C4. I think that's like a huge thing early on. But yeah, like, I only met Botch once, but I really just loved how he like was like, we had arguments about like whatever, can't remember, some Canucks thing, but like immediately gave me credit, was not like, who's this random English girl yelling at me? Like,
I ask that every day myself.
Yeah, Chris thinks about that a lot. But like immediately warmed up to him, I think. What I'd love to know is because how the Botchford project has changed. Like, it used to be everyone would have their own separate night, and now it's like originally because of pandemic constraints, but now just it seems to be like a more of a collaborative thing and like creating this little cohort of the three of you and what that experience was like.
Oh, yeah. I actually think that it's better to do it this way.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it
get
makes
it.
you a little less scared or intimidated. Even though, personally, I really thought I was going to be, really scared getting to the arena, being in the room, especially getting to be there at morning skate with all of, your tried and true game day journalists who, that's their 9 to 5. They're like, this is just another Tuesday to me. But being that's my first experience in that context in an NHL arena. And at that, I have done a little bit of juniors coverage, but that's an entirely different ball game because I'm not as intimidated by 15-year-old boys who
fair enough.
Ask me a question. I don't care. I'm thinking about my math homework or something. And but always give very insightful answers, I do have to say. But I had a lot of anxiety going into that, and I think I would have been tenfold if I had had a whole day been by myself instead of us kind of going as a cohort. Again, I thought I was going to be very nervous, but once I got there, everyone was so kind and helpful and very warm and welcoming. I shook so many hands that day and said hi to so many people. And I'm actually not out from BC. My family lived there, but I'm not from there myself. So it was really nice to be out there and meet a lot of my coworkers for the first time in person and see them there. And we took a big group photo of all the past Botchford Project participants who are now accredited journalists working at the arena, and there are so many. And it was really nice to be able to take that photo and see what that experience directly led them to. And it was really nice visualization of, wow, this is a really exciting and important opportunity. But yeah, so we actually didn't know, we all were reached out to individually. We didn't know who the other participants were going to be until it was publicly announced. And then we all kind of found each other's contact information and started the text thread. But yeah, so that was, it's really nice having a little cohort. And not to mention, there are so many people, past participants, who reached out to me and said, if you have any questions, need to know anything at all, please let me know. There's a very strong community there of people who've done it in the past that are truly doing an Ask Me Anything, and they want to support people coming in. And that's the one thing is, as much crap as the Canucks media does get, there really isn't a kind of network like that I find in a lot of other markets where the Canucks feel very open to the new media kind of sphere. Maybe not as much the team itself, but more the people who work in the market. And it's, despite the infighting and the things we don't agree on, and, I'm still mad about that one thing someone said 5 years ago, which, trust me, I have. But at the end of the day, especially when you're in that environment, you realize that that really doesn't matter when you're there and getting to meet everyone, and they're offering their resources and their time and their phone numbers and their emails and saying, if you ever need anything at all, please reach out. That is very, very special. And I got to told our main kind of babysitter isn't the right word. I want to say the people leading the charge on the project this year, who kind of were our go-to, just kind of around for game night and everything, was Thomas Drentz and Jeff Patterson. And Jeff Patterson very kindly was my proofreader for my final piece that came out, and we had a lot of back and forth. And in our final kind of Zoom call to wrap everything up, I got to tell him, I said directly, I said, I'm not sure if you get this feeling a lot, because I know it's your job, and I'm sure you wake up some days and aren't super excited about having to go to work. But I just said that, a lot of my friends who work in other markets, smaller markets, Canadian markets too, they don't have this kind of support. And I want you to know that it's very unique and very special. And that's the number one thing, is that, especially in a year that's been kind of negative, I think.
Yeah, not what we wanted.
Yeah. But, if you've been around long enough, you know that there's been other negative years as well. And, I got to speak to a couple of participants of the Botchford Project who were there 2 years ago, right before the trade deadline in 2023. So right around when Boudreau was fired and Bo got traded. And my kind of opinion going into this year was, if those people could do it then, I can certainly do it now.
Yeah, that's true. And for people that haven't read your article, like Canucks.com are putting up the articles. All 3 have gone up this week, right?
I think there's still one more to come out. I believe Nicoletta, one of my cohort. So far, there's 2 out. So there's Josh, there's mine, and Nicoletta's, I think, is coming out next week.
Okay, great.
So keep an eye out for that soon. But yeah, you can read them on Canucks.com. All 3 of us, they're out there.
What made you want to write? So yours is about Connor Garland. Spoiler alert to anyone that hasn't read it. Please do check it out. But like, what made you want to write about him?
Because I love Connor Garland. That's really it. Like, there's a lot of players, I think, on this team who would have been really fascinating to write about. And they did make it very clear that I did pitch, that is the story. So the article I ended up writing is the article I pitched at the time of my application. However, they made it clear to us along the way in the weeks of prep before the actual game day that we could totally change who and what we wanted to talk about. So the Canucks communication team was very helpful, is that, we got there the day of the arena, and for media availability for the 3 of us, they're like, okay, so you all each need to talk to this player. Okay, made sure the player was available for as long as we needed them, which again was very lovely, very helpful. Yeah. Which some of us needed more time than others, but on a busy day like that, when it's a morning skate and all the reporters doing their jobs also need to get quotes in, there's kind of a lot going on. So it was really nice for them to kind of go out of their way to make sure we got what we needed. So despite us kind of having, free reign to write about whoever and whatever we would like, I decided to stick to my Garland story because I think that he's someone in the last 2 seasons especially, has become a lot more beloved with fans. And I don't think that's just because his game has been quite consistent, and consistently better, in my opinion. And it's not necessarily just like, his points totals went up. It's more like what he brings to the team.
Yeah.
And it's really funny that in the process of writing my piece, I think, who was it? Brad Richardson, I think, went on a podcast, and I think this was post Miller trade, and he said, Connor Garland is a leader in that room. That's really important, which was kind of the thesis of my article.
Right.
So that was helpful. Thanks for the promo.
Yeah, exactly. You could have just tweeted it out without quote. Yeah.
Thanks for the promo. But that was kind of my thesis going in. And, as someone who, loves hockey, has never been particularly good at it. I'm a terrible right-handed defenseman if anyone ever needs one.
Better than us.
I really... I mean, hey, I truly am god awful, but it's fun. I really have a soft spot for undersized players. No matter how you define that, what that means to you. I really just find that now that the sport is moving away from it, it's almost becoming less of an issue. But Garland, even in being still under 30, went through a lot to get where he is now. He was passed over his first year of draft eligibility entirely, just because people looked at, his combine and were like, no.
I mean, honestly, I think if anything, there's so many scouts and GMs and executives that still are just so old-fashioned in their thinking. And like, just think about what Pedersen, it was just like, how many times did we hear his weight reference in his rookie year? Like, it's kind of crazy how that kind of attitude still persists without looking at the play of the player.
That's the thing. It's too much of... And also, I understand roster management and the way that you build your roster. You have a certain vision for your team. I do understand that. But it feels like... I wanted to write about Garland specifically because he does not fit the mold of most traditional undersized players. You look at people who play it in the contemporary game and play contemporary style. You look at your Cole Caulfield. You look at the late, great Johnny Gaudreau. Those were very, very small players who very much do not play the game the way that Connor Garland does. And yet they all find their own success. I just love Garley the way... I think I described it in the article as... I think I said leaned over, but at one point I wanted to say hunched over the puck, because sometimes when he's out there, he almost looks like he's curling.
Yeah, he gets very close to the ice.
Yeah, and it helps that naturally he is closer to the ice. Just
yes, because that's how the height works. Yeah,
yeah. But he is brings a lot of power to his game, and I was very lucky that the game against the Ducks, he fought Trevor Zegras, and the next day my article came out.
Yeah,
amazing
that's
timing.
true.
Again, thank you, Connor, for doing that unintentionally. You had no idea.
Oh no, it was intentional.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he knew.
He was just like, that's why it happened so late in the game, because he only just remembered, oh yeah, I got to promote this article.
Yeah, he was like, oh yeah, that girl I met 6 weeks ago has that thing happening.
Yeah,
I should really give it.
That's exactly how it went. I don't know why you have any doubt in your voice.
That's totally what happened. He knows the Canucks content calendar. He's actually interning in their social media.
Yeah, that's his plan for after he retires.
All the smart players are looking for that next gig.
Exactly. He knows what's up. He's like, hey, I'm not going to play hockey forever. Maybe another 10 years tops. I need it out here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god, I do. He actually was very, very lovely to talk to. When I first told everyone who I was getting to speak to, what my article was about, I got the same reaction for everyone, which was just, "Oh, that's good." And at first, I was like, "What do you?"
Good, yeah, good. How?
What do you mean that's good? But then, on the day of even after the experience, Chris Faber was talking to me and he said, no, that's actually really good. He's very easy to talk to. You'll get great quotes from him, but also he's very approachable. He's easy to speak to. When not that anyone else in the locker room is like terrible or whatever, but some of them can famously, can be a little more closed off or harder to talk to. And I do think that they know on Botchford Day to be on their best behavior.
Yeah, I did. Honestly, that was my next question. Like, did you feel that, and did that go away after you went into the locker room post game when they had just lost to Buffalo? Or
you know what? When we got to, you know how bad it was when we bolted right away. Like the buzzer went off and we were already halfway to the elevators downstairs. It took maybe 3.5 minutes, I want to say.
Yeah.
By the time we all got down to the locker room, it was empty. So they had all gone to like their I don't know what the situation was, but
yeah,
they were already picking people to send out to do post game media.
Right. They were already like, okay, we don't want to be here unless we have to.
Haunting. The way that there wasn't even any like equipment managers in sight. It was just their gear hanging up. And it was so sad seeing their tape just like strewn everywhere. And it kind of looked like the leftovers, like they all just kind of disappeared at the same time. And only their gear remains. I want to say that like it took the wind out of their sails, but really that day the wind wasn't really there. Again, I'd say all the team staff, the reporters were absolutely lovely, very kind to me. I also want to shout out Daniel Wagner. He was very kind to me. We had some good chats. But it was kind of nice there. I actually had to wait the longest to speak to Garland. So both other participants were already kind of chatting, and I was kind of just like awkwardly there in the middle of the room for, I want to say, like 10 or 15 minutes. So Wagner and Faber came and talked to me and hung out with me a bit, which was very kind of them. So
again,
just like
Wag's someone we give a lot of crap to on this show, but is a good friend of the show.
Yeah, like again, like I shut up because again, thought I would be nervous, but I felt fine. But I did recognize that it was kind of awkward, just like me standing around.
Yeah.
All these players are like, who let their child in? Like, what is going on? Because I'm all of like 5'2", but that's another reason why I wanted to speak to Connor is that truly, when I was a kid growing up playing sports, I did get like your short crap a lot because I still am. And I recognize in a sport like the NHL, it's kind of more intense. And in men's hockey, your height and your weight is kind of like peak. That's everything, right? On your sheet. But it was truly an experience. Even just being down there after morning skate. I don't know how to describe the atmosphere of that day. To set the scene for everyone, this was January 21st. So it was the game against the Sabres. So this is a couple weeks before Miller got traded. And we even were joking at morning skate, like, guys, this might be the last game we ever see JT Miller play as a Canuck. And it wasn't the last. We weren't that far off.
Yeah.
And I do want to say that, like, there was a certain aura of like being down there in the room. Again, it wasn't a super populated morning skate either. It wasn't mandatory full team. quite a few players showed up regardless. Again, I want to say the people who were super smiley, friendly, laughing, like carrying the vibes. It was Max Sasson. He was up with the team at that time. Kiefer Sherwood, Jake DeBrusque. I want to say PDG was there as well. I believe that was everyone who was kind of very, very hyped, very like, yeah, let's get at it. Just kind of walking around, smiling, laughing, talking to the reporters and their staff and everything. Again, no one was like outwardly rude or anything.
No,
but
yeah,
there was a certain atmosphere of something not quite being right. Especially when more of the core players started to show up. And Demko came in for morning skate and was kind of very quiet. He's not known to be a particularly loud, but he was very quiet, very subdued. He kind of is taking off his pads, and PD was hanging around talking to the comm staff, and I'm not even kidding. He in a black hoodie with the hood up, like it just looked like he just found out who My Chemical Romance is. But again. I do want to give a shout out to PD because he was absolutely lovely the whole day. And I guess many people's common beliefs is a very approachable person. But yeah, and then even like Quinn was kind of around, but like sort of dip. Like, I'm trying to think of that day they did make PDG post-game media and Demko as well, which was really unfortunate because they both seemed maybe the saddest I've ever seen them.
Wow. And that's quite a bar.
Well, I mean, that's saying a lot. Again, the point I want to make is that just like from the morning, something about the aura was just, and I'm not even making this up for like drama because we're past that by now, but there was a certain sense of like something is kind of off in the dynamic here and I can't quite figure out what. This is not all like an we're all friends type situation. Like anyone who does not have to be here has left so quickly. And I did see Miller. He kind of came in, like kind of like ripped all of his gear off as he is wont to do. And just kind of like disappeared again. Like he definitely again, I like nothing against him as a person. Because his interactions with fans are very lovely. He definitely in that moment gave off a very strong "do not fuck with me" energy. And that was at a morning skate that like really did not matter all that much. He just came in and was really like there was just a presence there, that didn't feel great. And that's even as someone who I was like. By then, I'd accept that Miller was an issue, but I had been a big fan of him for years in Vancouver, and even I, standing right next to him, was like. I don't like this. Like, I don't I mean, energy right now.
You're 100% not saying anything that other people haven't said. So, but like, it is interesting to note that from an outsider perspective, and definitely on a day when they were the outsiders were there, he still was not in a good spot. Like, let's just...
You know what? I was going... I thought I was going crazy. Like, I did think I was going a bit insane, so I didn't want to say anything. But right after morning skate, we were spending some time with a member of the team staff, and the first thing that they said to us, a little Botchford group, when we were kind of out of the locker room environment, they just went, "Whoa, you guys feel the energy in there?" And I just went, "Okay, so we can talk about it."
Yeah,
So
that's funny that even the Canucks staff were saying that. So.
Yeah,
well, okay.
and I think it was...
Were they saying that in the context of, hey, cat's out of the bag? Or because I asked this only because of my historic context that I've had with Canucks staff is sometimes they try to generate the buzz when the buzz ain't present.
It was very much, it was out, I will say this, it was outside of Rogers Arena. We were no longer on...
Okay, gotcha.
We were no longer on Canucks property.
Yeah.
It was very much like, okay, now that no one that I work for can hear
me, like,
what's up with that, I was just very glad for that because I didn't want to feel like I was going crazy. And that also kind of like I felt it lift a weight off the chest of the three of us because I think even before we'd kind of chatted a little bit about what we were going to ask and everything, and we all kind of had a sense of being there as guests, how far is too far? Like, do we want to tip our toes in this feud business that has already been totally exhausted? Like,
Yeah.
we didn't want to step on any toes. So that definitely felt like a bit of a
it's validating thing. It's just like, okay, we're not gonna like write articles about this, obviously, but like, we're acknowledging it. It's here. It's real. Yeah. I mean, so awesome to hear about your experience and how, Canucks and media really made you feel at home in that space as much as possible. Curious, like, what's coming next with Canucks Army, with Offside? Like, what articles do you have in the pipeline?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, like I said, every Sunday and Monday I do 3 stars for Canucks Army. Some weeks are better than others. Some weeks it's just like, all right, here's who didn't totally suck. And with Offsides, we have articles coming out every day. We have, quite a few staff writers who work with us. I believe upcoming there, I always do my Canucks stuff for them. I'm co-editor-in-chief, so I kind of help oversee everything. But we do a bunch over there. We do NCAA. We also cover the PWHL. We actually have a beat reporter with the New York Sirens. So she goes to most games, covers that. We write about the Montreal Victoire pretty regularly as well.
Which I appreciate.
Yeah, like we really wanted to create something that like people who don't have any writing experience can come to and get experience writing, and I'm very grateful for that because it truly started as a side project and that has become more serious. Like we were given media accreditation for a few events this year, like so it's going somewhere.
Yeah,
which was not the plan, but it's happened by happenstance. So, you can find my work there, and also even just my on my social media or on my author page, either on Canucks Army and Offside News, you can find a whole bunch of stuff that I've written in the past, and not just about the Canucks. I like to say that I'm nosy, so I will write about any team at any time if I get the whim to. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we can't wait to see it. Maybe
Thank you.
In the summer, we'll see this 2019 draft conspiracy article emerge somewhere.
Why are our children breaking? This goes.
There's a headline already.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Any more from you, Chris?
Well, I mean, I was so enthralled with how you were, describing your experience and our listeners are probably wondering if I was still around. I don't normally stay quiet for that long. So I think it's a credit to how you were able to, not only describe your experience, but weave together the story. And I would imagine, this is the same experience that we'd get, reading your work and listening to your other podcast. One thing I am disappointed in. Nowhere did I see any Jaws content.
True.
When you spoke to Connor, and you know what? Disappointment. I don't know if I'll get over it.
Oh,
it's a big thing on this podcast with Connor and Jaws. Some of the times I really stretch the whole, analogy and
I will give you some exclusive content.
Please.
Okay, that's what this podcast is for.
I will give you some exclusive Connor Garland content. Again, in the piece, I really had to keep it focused on just the quotes that were relevant. I had to fight pretty hard.
Did JPAT cut the Jaws stuff? Because then JPAT knows what he's done.
You know what? He didn't make me cut a lot, which I appreciate. I kind of handed it to him and I went, I'm sorry, I'm a very flowery writer. Like I'm from the humanities. I don't know what to say. And he went, no, flowery is good. Like I'm here to make it better. Like, you keep your voice, which I guess is the whole point of the Botchford Project, is they want you to come across as how you are. But Connor was very, very gracious to lend me his time. Again, he'd already spoken to a few reporters. This was at the very end of Morning Skate media availability. He probably just wanted to go home. But, he spent a fair amount of time with me answering any question I had. And the stuff that I had to cut from my article because it wasn't relevant, I didn't get to ask him about Jaws. I did consider it, but then I realized that I'm like, you know what? He probably gets that all the time. Like, I can leave the shark stuff to like an annual sharks conversation. Like, it'll come up again, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Next time I encounter Connor Garland. However, He did say very, very wonderful things about the fan base that were not, your boilerplate PR answers that I really appreciated.
Nice.
He specifically called out training camp this year and said it was a really, really lovely experience and that he would love to go back there. And I didn't even ask him a question about it directly. He just brought it up unprompted, which I thought was very sweet. And he definitely seems like someone who is very aware and very grateful of his position. I do want to say that he did bring up Quinn Hughes a lot. Also what I didn't ask him to, so their relationship is also very clearly important to not only them as friends, but to the room as well. Kind of speaking to the leadership. And we did have a whole conversation about JT Miller that I did have to cut out because he got traded in between.
Yeah.
However, it's fine. I have the transcript forever. It'll be locked down.
Okay.
But yeah, there was a lot of kind of stuff that obviously was not relevant to the story I was weaving, but I thought was very sweet and showed us a little behind the curtain of how important Garland is to keeping that locker room together, especially through the winter this year, which is very volatile.
Yeah.
And for a very solid middle sixer, I think we got a good one.
Cool. Well, we're going to thank you a couple more times as well as we wrap the show, but thanks for sharing, your experience and joining us on the episode this week. It's as I had sort of let off, good to have, another bright and intelligent voice on the show because Anna has to carry the load herself normally.
Yeah. Chris loves saying this.
Hey, I'm nothing if not self-deprecating, right? That's my shtick. The moment I start becoming full of myself and actually mean it, C4 is done for. But if you don't want C4 to be over, what can you do to support the show? Well, one of the greatest things that you can do is tell someone about it. Again, we're 136 on your 137 Canucks podcast dial. We're the best mediocre one out there, but we are the longest running Canucks podcast. There is no one longer than us. We will hang our hat on that forevermore. But you can also take part in the conversation at C4 Discord, discord.says C4 podcast. If you got a few bucks, you shook out the Chesterfield, a couple toonies came flying out, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/C4 podcast. Buy Me a Coffee is also known as what, Anna?
Buy me a pint.
And you can throw a couple of bucks our way as a one-off to buy us that pint. But if you are so inspired, you can support us either on a monthly or annual basis. It's $5 a month or $50 for the year. And in doing so, that scores you one of the exclusive C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast stickers. The only way to get one is to support us monthly or annually, or happen to be in the UK when Anna takes a buttload of them to spread around the old country.
Yeah, I hand them out like no movement clauses back in the day.
And as we are on all the socials. We're all sorts of names because heaven forbid brand consistency wherever to have been important to me. If you follow us on X or Twitter, it's at the C4 Podcast. If you happen to go over to Threads, it's at the Real C4 Podcast, and on Blue Sky, C4podcast.com. Because, brand consistency. What is that? Ariel, where might our listeners find you? If they made it this point, they're going to slap that follow button. How do they do that?
You can find me. I am at Ellie Selly. That's ELLYCELLY. I like to rhyme. I'm at Ellie Selly on X, Twitter. I'm also that on Blue Sky, or you can find me at Ariel.Lalonde on Instagram. And through those, you can find my writing or send me a message. I'm happy to chat Canucks and hockey anytime.
Awesome.
Cool. Any final words of wisdom to our listeners this week?
Yeah. First off, keep on keeping on. The Vancouver Canucks are a struggle, and they always will be. Yeah. And yet we are all here because we love them. And it is a toxic relationship, but we are in it to win it. And I guess my second word of wisdom is just, if you've considered applying for the Botchford Project next season or any season in the future, do it. Don't question it. Just do it. Because I applied, and I never in a million years thought that I would get to go to Rogers Arena and spend a day as a member of the Canucks media, but I did, and it was awesome, and it was one of the best experiences of my life so far, and has done so much for my career and my network and everything. So I just want to say, if you're nervous, if you're not sure, A, do it, or B, shoot me a message, send me an email. If you have any questions, any about specifics or just want some general guidance about Botchware Project in the future, I am more than happy to answer more of your questions, and because I think it is a really awesome experience.
Awesome. Anna.
Yeah, it's just really great to hear. I think that's an awesome note to end on because Botch was all about keeping that letter unfurled so that more people could get their leg up, and I appreciate that that's really been infused in all the Botch Project participants, past and present. So, yeah, I really long may that legacy continue.
And my final words of wisdom in honor of Botch: do your deeks.
Do your deek.
So on behalf of Anna, A4-03, myself, Chris at Lifeforce, and friend of the show, special guest, we're going to have her back. You know we will. Ariel at Ellie Selly. We out.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.